The soft hiss of the spa doors sliding open drew a few curious glances, but most visitors were too engrossed in their massages or facial treatments to pay attention. A figure glided in, her movement unnaturally smooth, precise, almost as if she floated rather than walked. Her hands, slender and tipped with faintly luminescent nails, adjusted a strange metallic device tucked under her arm. Every gesture was deliberate, almost ceremonial, and her presence alone seemed to bend the ambient light. A few towels slipped from her case, bouncing harmlessly to the floor, and she paused, glancing down with a tilt of her head, clearly calculating the best method to retrieve them without disrupting the world around her. The spa was a busy cacophony. A towel rack wobbled precariously behind the reception desk, a robotic diffuser sprayed mist unevenly, and a pair of tourists laughed at a spa menu they clearly didn't understand. The figure stepped cautiously past the chaos, glancing toward a counter where a human, noticeably flustered, juggled bottles of lotion while attempting to answer the phone. He froze as his eyes caught her, tilting his head in a silent question. She offered a faint nod, almost imperceptible, her luminescent eyes betraying a mixture of anxiety and dignity. His hands shook slightly as he attempted to steady the lotion bottles, which slipped from his grip and splashed softly across the counter. A glance down revealed an unusual contraption protruding subtly from her attire, designed for reasons he couldn't begin to comprehend. She gestured delicately toward it, hands moving in the kind of precise, ritualistic patterns that suggested both importance and urgency. Nearby tourists peeked over shoulders, mistaking her movements for some avant-garde spa demonstration. One elderly woman gasped and clutched her pearl necklace as the figure demonstrated the procedure, her motions fluid yet undeniably purposeful, while a man in a sauna misted with towel steam misread the movements as a new yoga technique. The human blinked, unsure whether to intervene or faint. She approached the counter, placing her device carefully on the polished wood, her fingers brushing lightly against his hand as she did. The touch was brief, deliberate, and left a subtle warmth lingering in the air. He coughed softly, trying to regain composure, aware of a strange tingling in his chest that he had no reason to feel but couldn't ignore. She lowered herself to a subtle crouch, scanning the small manual she had brought along, and gestured again toward the equipment that, somehow, only he could understand. The tourist's whispers grew louder. A young man in flip-flops poked a camera phone toward the demonstration, convinced this was an interactive performance art piece. The human hesitated, leaning over the counter as if proximity alone would grant understanding. He shifted bottles awkwardly, one tilting dangerously, releasing a tiny waterfall of lotion across the counter. The alien froze, her hands hovering, her posture rigid yet undeniably elegant, exuding the kind of calm that demanded precision even in pandemonium. He reached out, attempting to steady the device, his fingers brushing hers again, this time longer. A faint hum vibrated through the alien's body, a noise subtle enough that nearby humans mistook it for ambient music from the diffuser. Her hands twitched, barely visible, coordinating some internal ritual, and the human mimicked, awkward and clumsy, but earnest. Nearby, a pair of tourists collided with a towel cart, sending rolls of fluffy cotton tumbling onto the floor. The alien barely flinched, her eyes tracking each movement with meticulous calculation, recalibrating the ritual in response to environmental disturbances. The human jumped forward, catching a stray towel with a sweaty palm, and nearly collided with her again. Their hands touched in a fleeting brush that carried a jolt neither fully understood but both felt. She tilted slightly forward, a posture indicating both trust and the necessity of precision, while he tried to steady himself and the alien contraption at the same time, beads of nervous sweat forming on his forehead. A mist sprayer, triggered accidentally by a careless foot, sprayed a fine layer of warm steam across the floor, pooling near their feet. The alien's device whirred in response, an unmistakable sign of tension in her body that the human interpreted as a cue to act. With a combination of hesitation and luck, he adjusted the device, fumbling but persistent, and the alien's posture softened, indicating progress. Nearby humans continued to misinterpret the scene. Some applauded, thinking it a demonstration, others whispered conspiratorially about the strange, spa ritual, taking place before them. The alien's luminescent eyes flicked toward the human once more, a subtle acknowledgement that he, somehow, was integral to this process, her dignity perfectly preserved despite the absurdity surrounding them. By the time the towels were gathered, the devices aligned, and the last drops of lotion contained, a fragile calm settled over the counter. She stood fully upright, giving a barely perceptible hum of approval, her hand brushing his again, longer this time, a silent but unmistakable gesture of thanks. The human, flushed and bewildered, leaned back slightly, catching his breath and feeling an unfamiliar surge of pride mixed with confusion. Around them, the spa resumed its normal, chaotic rhythm, oblivious to the extraordinary interaction that had just occurred, leaving only the faint scent of lotions, the warmth of shared contact, and the promise of further complications in the days to come. The soft hum of the spa's ambient music was quickly drowned out by the sound of splashing water, rolling towels, and the faint hiss of malfunctioning steam diffusers. The alien crouched gracefully near a polished table, her tools lined with meticulous precision, their metallic surfaces catching the warm glow of overhead lights. She gestured delicately toward the human, indicating it was time for the daily ritual to begin. His eyes widened, a bead of sweat trailing down his temple as he stared at the unfamiliar equipment, unsure how to proceed without making a catastrophic mistake. He reached out, fingers trembling, trying to mimic her fluid hand movements. Immediately, one of the devices slipped, skittering across the counter, sending a thin ribbon of gel spraying toward a nearby towel tower. A cascade of fluffy rolls tumbled to the floor, barely missing a group of spagoers who were now staring with a mixture of fascination and confusion. The alien tilted her head, her glowing eyes flicking from the device to the human and back, an almost imperceptible hum escaping her lips. It was both a sound of encouragement and exasperation, subtle enough that the tourists interpreted it as part of the ambient spa soundtrack. Steam hissed from a misaligned diffuser, forming little clouds around their legs. The human lunged to adjust it, inadvertently bumping into a small tray of alien tools. One of the instruments flipped end over end, landing with a soft clink on the edge of the table. He froze, heart pounding, and glanced up at the alien. Her posture remained poised, though a subtle shiver ran through her, betraying the tension she usually masked perfectly. His hands shook as he tried to stabilize both the tray and the alien device, fingers brushing against hers accidentally. The touch lingered just a moment too long, and an electric awareness sparked between them, subtle but undeniable. Nearby, an elderly spagoer leaned over to inspect a strange glowing vial, convinced it was some kind of new facial treatment. Another tourist mistook a small brush for a novelty massage tool, poking it toward the alien's setup with gleeful ignorance. Every action sent the ritual further into chaos, yet the alien adapted with an uncanny grace, adjusting her posture, repositioning her tools, and humming softly. The human, meanwhile, was a flurry of panic and determination, fumbling with instructions he barely understood, yet somehow aligning with her motions just enough to make progress. Finally, after a particularly clumsy attempt, a device clicked into place. The alien's subtle hum grew slightly louder, an unmistakable signal of success. The human exhaled in relief, stepping back just in time to avoid being drenched by a burst of warm water from a nearby hydrotherapy unit. The alien's hands moved toward her own device, guiding it gently, while he mirrored her motions, hands hovering just above hers. Steam curled around them, creating an almost ethereal atmosphere, and the faceless camera captured the moment entirely through gestures and motion, the tilt of her head, the slight lean toward him, the trembling of his hands. As the ritual continued, a minor mishap caused lotion to spray into the air, coating the countertop and part of his uniform. He cursed softly under his breath, attempting to mop it up while keeping his focus on her intricate motions. She tilted slightly, letting him steady her when she slipped on the slick surface, their hands brushing again. The contact was brief but electric, a silent acknowledgement of trust and shared vulnerability. A faint blush seemed to ripple through her skin, visible only as a subtle shimmer, while the human's breath caught in his chest. A rogue towel, flung from the earlier collapse, bounced onto the alien's foot. She lifted it gracefully, yet the momentum caused her balance to shift, pressing her slightly against him. Their hands met again, and for the briefest instant, the chaos of lotion, towels, and misfiring equipment vanished, leaving only the tension and connection between them. Faceless camera angles focused on the motion, the tremor of fingers, the soft adjustment of her stance, the careful way he steadied her. The spa around them continued its oblivious rhythm, tourists murmuring about interactive exhibits, while staff scrambled to fix the minor disasters. Finally, after a series of clumsy but effective maneuvers, the device responded fully, signaling the ritual's successful completion. The alien exhaled a soft, relieved hum, her shoulders relaxing, and she allowed herself a brief, subtle lean toward him. The human's hands lingered near hers, not touching now, but the shared awareness was palpable. Around them, the spa-goers clapped and laughed, still unaware of the exact nature of the ritual, attributing the spectacle to an avant-garde performance. The alien straightened, gesturing toward a small bowl of water and cloths, signaling the next step in her hygiene routine. The human, cheeks flushed and hands slick with lotion, nodded obediently, following her instructions with a mix of awe and nervous excitement. Their motions synchronized imperfectly, yet the shared effort and constant near misses had created a rhythm of its own. Every accidental touch, every brushing of hands, had formed a subtle, unspoken connection. The faceless camera lingered on small, intimate details, fingers adjusting tools, the gentle curve of her wrist, the way he steadied her without looking, and the faint shimmer of relief and trust in her alien skin. By the time the ritual concluded, the spa was a chaotic mess, towels strewn across the floor, lotion and water pooling near the counters, and confused but amused tourists snapping photos. Yet amidst the absurdity, a quiet moment of connection remained between the alien and the human. Their hands hovered near one another for the last adjustment, eyes unseen but implied through posture and gestures, conveying gratitude, trust, and a spark of something more. The ritual had been completed successfully, chaos had been endured, and in the process, a subtle, faceless romance had begun to bloom. The spa had barely recovered from the last ritual when the doors slid open again with a quiet hiss, admitting another set of visitors. Their presence was unmistakable, faintly glowing skin, subtle iridescent patterns, and hands that moved with unnatural precision. Without a word, they began unpacking a variety of strange devices, some resembling small tubes of liquid, others more like metallic brushes or glowing vials. The first alien glanced at the human, her head tilting slightly as if weighing his competency against the obvious chaos already surrounding him. The human, juggling a dripping towel and a lotion bottle, froze for a heartbeat, staring at the new arrivals with equal parts awe and panic. Immediately, one of the new aliens attempted to set up her ritual table near the hydrotherapy unit. Her device slid on the wet floor, tipping slightly and sending a small spray of water across the counter. The first alien flinched, stepping quickly to stabilize both her own tools and the rogue equipment, her fingers brushing against the human again in the process. He stumbled slightly, catching a stray vial with one hand while supporting the alien with the other. A faint hum escaped her lips, almost like a sigh, and the human, despite himself, felt a pulse of warmth run through his chest. Nearby tourists murmured in confusion, some assuming the glowing vials were part of a futuristic aromatherapy demonstration. One curious child reached toward a small brush, mistaking it for a toy, only to be gently intercepted by a robotic spa arm that whirled into action with a comical squeak. Steam hissed from a nearby diffuser, curling around their legs and forming hazy tendrils across the floor. The human shifted to avoid slipping, his hands brushing against the first alien once more as she guided him to adjust the device. The moment was brief but charged. The faceless camera captured only hands, gestures, and posture, conveying trust and growing intimacy without ever showing faces. As the new aliens attempted their rituals, chaos erupted in all directions. One misfired device sent a small fountain of iridescent liquid across the floor, nearly soaking a cluster of towels. Another alien's tools emitted a faint pulsing sound, startling a group of tourists who leapt back in comic exaggeration. The first alien sighed, a long, melodic hum, and gestured for the human to assist her again. He moved swiftly, slipping slightly on the wet floor, catching her hand to steady her. The contact lingered a moment longer than necessary, and both felt an unspoken acknowledgement of connection, and intimacy growing amidst absurdity. The human attempted to coordinate both rituals, balancing lotion bottles, towels, and alien devices in a flurry of motion. Every time he adjusted one tool, another seemed to misfire. Steam vents whistled, sprays of water arced into the air, and towels tumbled from carts. The aliens adapted gracefully, their bodies moving with elegant precision, but even they couldn't prevent the occasional comedic disaster. The human, red-faced and drenched in a mixture of lotion and water, persisted. His clumsy improvisation somehow aligned with the aliens' movements, each near miss creating a rhythm of chaos that was almost synchronized, and yet entirely unplanned. In the midst of this absurd ballet, the first alien leaned slightly toward him to retrieve a misaligned device. Their hands brushed again, this time with deliberate steadiness. Steam curled around them, creating a private, faceless bubble amid the chaos. The warmth of her skin, or what he imagined as warmth, against his hand sent a shiver up his spine. The hum she emitted, soft and melodic, seemed to echo in time with his own rapid breathing. Every gesture, tilt of her head, and subtle shift of posture conveyed gratitude, trust, and a growing curiosity about the strange human who somehow managed to navigate her world. Meanwhile, the other aliens continued their own rituals, each more complicated than the last. A spray of shimmering liquid landed on a nearby towel cart, sending a cascade of fluffy rolls onto the floor. The human lunged to catch a tray, slipping slightly and catching the first alien in the process. She tilted gracefully, letting him steady her without complaint, their hands lingering just a fraction longer than necessary. Tourists whispered and laughed, interpreting the entire scene as avant-garde performance art, completely oblivious to the very intimate and absurdly adult nature of what was unfolding. Finally, after a series of clumsy but ultimately successful maneuvers, the first alien's ritual concluded. A subtle hum of relief escaped her, and she allowed herself a slight lean toward him, almost imperceptible, but enough to convey satisfaction and trust. He, still dripping with lotion and water, managed a crooked but proud stance, his hands hovering near hers, ready to assist if needed. The faceless camera lingered on small details, the faint shimmer of her skin, the gentle way he steadied her, the subtle, unspoken chemistry building between them amidst the absurd chaos. The spa, meanwhile, was a disaster zone, towels scattered across the floor, lotion and water forming puddles near the counters, and tourists still snapping photos, assuming this was part of the experience. The other aliens, seeing the success of the first ritual, prepared for their next attempts, eyes flicking toward the human with the faintest hint of expectation. The human sighed, realizing that his quiet day at a human spa had transformed into an intergalactic routine of awkward, messy, and unexpectedly intimate rituals. And somewhere amid the chaos, a subtle romance was blossoming, faceless but undeniable, tethered together by shared trust, accidental touches, and the bizarre demands of alien hygiene rituals. The spa had become a chaotic tableau of towels, puddles of lotion, and equipment scattered across every available surface. Steam curled lazily from diffusers, mingling with the soft hum of alien devices, creating an almost ethereal fog around the central figures. The first alien stood, her posture relaxed now that her ritual was complete, but a faint shimmer along her skin hinted at lingering tension and gratitude. The human, still slick with lotion and water, adjusted a stray towel, glancing toward her with a mixture of exhaustion and something warmer, something unspoken. She gestured gently toward a small basin of warm water, signaling a final step in her hygiene routine. His hands moved carefully, steadying the tools as she guided the motion with subtle, precise gestures. Their hands brushed repeatedly, fingers tangling momentarily, sending sparks of awareness through both of them. Every motion was deliberate, an unspoken rhythm of trust forming in the middle of the absurd mess. The tourists nearby whispered and chuckled, snapping photos, oblivious to the intimacy of the moment. Some assumed it was part of a futuristic demonstration, applauding politely at each completed step. A stray towel fell from a cart, and he lunged to catch it, slipping slightly on the damp floor. She leaned instinctively, allowing him to steady her. Their hands met again, lingering fractionally longer than necessary, the connection undeniable despite the chaos around them. The hum she emitted, soft and melodic, seemed to fill the air around them, wrapping them in a faceless cocoon of sound and warmth. He took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing heart, while marveling at how surreal yet intimate this moment had become. Nearby, the other aliens completed their own rituals, occasionally glancing at him with what could only be described as expectant curiosity. The spa-goers, blissfully ignorant, continued their activities. Towels were flung, steam hissed, and small devices sputtered and clicked. Yet amid the pandemonium, a quiet focus formed between the human and the first alien. Her hands guided his with subtle corrections, her posture softening as if letting him share in the completion of her delicate procedure. Every accidental brush, every subtle pressure of fingers, carried more meaning than words ever could. Finally, the last tool was cleaned and stowed. The alien exhaled a soft, relieved hum, leaning slightly toward him in a gesture of acknowledgement and subtle intimacy. He steadied her with both hands, careful not to disrupt her grace, their fingers brushing in a silent, almost ceremonial contact. Steam rose between them, curling around their entwined hands, the faceless camera capturing only gestures and movements that spoke volumes. The chaos of towels, lotion, and confused tourists faded into background noise, leaving only the unspoken connection that had grown stronger with every shared mishap. The human allowed himself a small, crooked smile, wiping a mixture of lotion and water from his palms. She mirrored the gesture with a slight tilt, an alien equivalent of acknowledgement and perhaps amusement. Their proximity, the repeated touches, and the rhythm they had unintentionally created had formed a bond that neither could deny. A faint blush shimmered across her luminescent skin, subtle but visible, and his chest tightened at the sight, awareness of their closeness growing with every second. A final mishap provided a last comedic flourish. A rogue spray nozzle sputtered, sending a jet of warm water arcing across the room. The first alien instinctively moved back, the human lunged, and their hands met once again, steadying each other. The absurdity of the moment was undeniable, but instead of frustration, a quiet laughter seemed to pass between them, faceless, yet unmistakable. Around them, tourists continued snapping photos and whispering excitedly, entirely oblivious to the deeply intimate and adult context of the rituals. With the rituals complete, she straightened fully, gesturing for him to step back. He obeyed, hands still hovering nearby, ready to assist if needed, but allowing her dignity and privacy to reclaim the space. She gave a faint, approving hum, and he returned a small, awkward nod, a shared acknowledgement of triumph and mutual understanding. The faceless camera lingered on their hands one last time, fingers brushing, palms hovering, the faint shimmer of skin against skin, and the delicate warmth that had blossomed between them amidst the chaos. The spa slowly returned to normal. Towels were gathered, water mopped, devices cleaned. Steam dissipated, leaving only the faint smell of lotion and warmth in the air. Yet, in the midst of the ordinary, an extraordinary connection remained. The first alien's gaze, conveyed through subtle movements and gestures, lingered on him with trust and affection. The human, exhausted but exhilarated, recognized the silent bond that had formed. Chaos had been endured, rituals had been completed, and somewhere in the absurdity, romance had quietly emerged. As she prepared to leave, she offered a small, graceful gesture of farewell, her hands brushing his once more. He nodded, his chest tightening in response, fingers lingering briefly before letting go. Around them, the spa continued its oblivious rhythm, but for the two central figures, a new understanding had been forged. Trust, intimacy, and an unspoken affection had survived the chaos of alien hygiene rituals, paving the way for more shared, faceless adventures in a universe where absurdity and romance intertwined seamlessly.